So what we've done is we've trained our clinicians in these crisis services to do a very, very quick differential diagnosis and a problem assessment in that situation because the time of the clinician in a crisis is so valuable, right? It's so expensive, that service. So you want to determine right away, is this call serious enough to warrant responding to? And all of those nuisance calls, and that's what they're called in crisis services, then get classified right away. And the crisis clinician says, well, John, you've called again. Thank you very much. But you really don't need the crisis service. And this is a very important line, and we have to keep the line open. So goodbye, John. You hang on. Now, the message to John, of course, in that is that you have to be really, really crazy in order to get my attention. So talk to anybody who does crisis work, and you'll see that there's this whole body of people who get progressively crazier as they try to, quote, get attention from the mental health system. Well, what a perverse way to frame that situation in terms of what a warm line is. I mean, you're absolutely right. We'll talk about employment in a little while. Yeah. A warm line is the idea created by a bunch of users. Stop talking among yourselves. You have to There's a bunch of users got together and they said, well, what folks are really looking for is social support. Okay? So let us organize a group of users who will staff telephones 24 hours a day, and if people want social support, they don't have to call the crisis hotline, they can call us, and what we'll do is we'll chat with people, we'll give them support, but the other thing we'll do, remember we're talking about recovery, is we will encourage them to join a self-help group, to join up with other users, to begin to advocate about their condition, and we'll use the opportunity of their social isolation to invite them to really sort of move forward in their recovery process. The crisis services love it when you set up these warm lines because it relieves them of all the nuisance callers. Okay? Or they can say to the person, would you call, here's the resource for you, would you call, or they can say to the person, I will have the warm line get right back to you. Give me your phone number. There's a lot of interesting experiments with using users and professionals in general in response to crises. Pairing people, and Pierce was telling me last night about a program in Prato in Italy, in which, remember we were talking about access to the system this morning? It's so crucial about how what people's first experience is and how they kind of touch the system and where they get referred. And Pierce was telling me that in that particular system, the very first person that a service user ever connects with in crisis or when they have a problem is another service user who then helps them figure out from the basis of having used the system, where do you want to go next in the system? Do you need to see a psychiatrist? Do you need to do this? Do you need to do that? Can you imagine a system in which the first person a service user would see would be another service user to help them? And that's, and that's often what happens on this warm line thing. Somebody will call in, and they obviously can get help from other consumers, and it happens. So anyway, just a couple more words about recovery. I think we're doing well time-wise. Maintaining or developing connections to valued activities and people is critical. That was what I was talking about before. Continue to be able to function in everything you can, even while you're having a crisis. Recovery is a process of finding meaning in your experience. We'll talk about that in just a minute. To summarize, there's four sort of essential elements of recovery. Hope, which we talked about a lot. Personal responsibility, taking responsibility for your life. Self-advocacy, and education or information. All four of those are really critical, are critical supports to the recovery process. And I'll tell a story in a little while that helps with that. I want to say a little bit more about the process of recovery. Now, how many people here, we've sort of gotten to know each other today, so we can be a little more personal, right? I know British people are generally not personal, I understand this. But here's the question. How many people here consider themselves in recovery, actively in recovery from any kind of condition in their life? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. It's very interesting.
They didn't hear your question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Were they doing that again?
They were talking.
Shirley, could you keep your eye on that? I'm going to need some help with this. I said, how many people here actively consider themselves in recovery from some variety of circumstances, conditions in their life? Actively consider themselves in recovery. Now, if I were to say how many of you are former service users in the psychiatric system, it's a much smaller number. So do you see what I mean in terms of what we have to offer. And if all of our service users knew that we were working as partners in their recovery, but what we were using, as much as anything else, was our own process of recovery and understanding of that, we would be on a whole different basis with service users. And unfortunately, those of us who went through any kind of traditional clinical training program learned that that's the last thing you ever do. Okay? You are this we, they. You are the helper. They're the helpee. You have personal boundaries that you never cross over. And boundaries are important. Boundaries are important because you do have power over the service users. And you need to be extremely respectful of that and ethical about that. But boundaries does not mean that you are denied the opportunity to share your most essential tools for helping others, which is your own recovery process. Let's say it another way, very simply. You can only help somebody walk down a road that you've been down yourself in some analogous way. Now, maybe you haven't been a mental patient, but there are things in your life that you've done and had to cope with and had to recover from that may be extremely helpful as the person walks down that road. And if you set yourself up clinically where you can't share that responsibly, then it's ridiculous. You're really denying that person. So we need to do some more work on the boundaries issue. Let me just say one other comment about it. Organizations or programs that aren't actively working to help their staff redefine professional and consumer boundaries, if you're not actively working on redefining that, you're not necessarily a very helpful organization. You know why? Because what you learned about boundaries in professional training programs is not necessarily very helpful. It's a very old model. It really comes out of a psychoanalytic perspective. And it comes out of a perspective that really objectifies in many ways the person. So it isn't like we have all the answers to it yet, but we need to be actively working on the boundary issue with service users and with each other, redefining that in a way that those boundaries support recovery rather than separate our own valuable base of experience from consumers. Is everybody with me on that? Okay. Yeah.
I think that some of us
louder.
I think that some of us do actually work like that, at least with some individuals that we work
Yes.
with that we feel that we can do. But we're not brave about saying that when we're sitting in review meetings. Or
That's right.
So you don't sound professional, and maybe you'll get told that you shouldn't be working in that way. So when you do it, you don't broadcast it, but you know it's working with the person that you're working with.
Oh, this is so important. Everybody
Say
here.
exactly why this person
Yeah.
is doing well with you, and they don't with someone else. Yeah.
Everybody hear that? I mean, let's face it. If you're working with a